Welcome back to The Upshot. I hope you're not too scared like a little white pussy, because this is part 2 of our special series on Mike Tyson. I am Jack. Zach is still here.
Hello, Jack.
And we are joined once again by Will Richards.
Hello.
Hello.
Glad to be back in, I would say one piece, but in 2 pieces actually.
Yeah, so between recording episodes 1 and 2, you have sustained a broken arm, Will?
Yeah, I've snapped my wing. I've done myself an absolute mischief. All talk of Gary the Bully from the last episode. I wanted to revisit some old demons and didn't go well. Here
Tried
I am.
to settle a few old scores.
Right. And I've got a fractured elbow, but we move. Come on.
Much like Mitch Green, we get back up.
Yeah.
Are you gonna turn up to part 3 in like a neck brace and wheeled in here?
I'll be crawling in, Mitch Green style.
It's actually a good job. There's only 3 parts. I don't know if you'd last 4 or 5.
Yeah, I would be complete zombie by part 4.
Now, listeners will remember at the end of part 1, Mike Tyson had gone off the rails, sex addict, cokehead, and he just lost his world heavyweight title to a rank outsider. So I hesitate to use the term rock bottom because this story has many twists and turns, but that's where we left him, isn't it, Zach? Do you want to kick us off? Take us into part 2.
Yeah. So after that fight, he's pretty down in the dumps, and he decides that the best way to deal with the situation is just to train like mad. So that's what he does. He goes back, lives with Camille Customato's old wife for a while, and yeah, he's just training all the time. His comeback fight, he knocks out Henry Tillman in round 1, so sort of back to his old high energy style. Actually, during training for that fight, he has his first child with a woman called Natalie Fears. He names the kid D'Amato after Cus D'Amato, his old trainer. And, you know, his comeback goes pretty well. He gets a few wins under his belt, and he's beginning to get back to his old cocky ways. He's taunting everyone. He's doing these ballsy press conferences. We got a clip here.
I've kicked Stewart ass and give him a slow beating, nearly death. I'm going to take whoever's the win after that, the Holyfield Douglas fight, and then regain my title. And hopefully I can fight Razor Ruddock or this other guy, George Foreman, before he die of, rigor mortis.
Cool. So he's dishing it out to George Foreman. I guess George Foreman's still a going concern at that point. They never fight, do they?
Yeah, I don't think so. No, he's a big name.
Despite his rigor mortis.
Yeah. So Mike he's back to his old ways, and his camp are really just trying to keep him on the straight and narrow a little bit. So he goes to this training camp before the fight against Razor Ruddock, and his trainer puts a 7 p.m. curfew on him. He's not allowed out after 7. But, Mike's not having any of that. He sneaks out almost every night to drive to LA for a booty call. So the guy ends up putting alarms on the house so that Mike can't escape. And one night his minder gets woken up by these alarms going off at like 2 a.m. And Mike has jumped out of a 2nd floor window and is tangled in a thorny bush in the front garden trying to escape.
Can I just confirm that's not Neil Razor Ruddock?
It's no. So Neil Razor Ruddock was named after Razor. His name's Neil Ruddock. Razor Ruddock.
I never knew
his real name. I can't remember. He's a Canadian boxer.
Right.
So they have this like 2-fight series, which is quite bad tempered. After I think it's before the first fight, they get into it. Their teams like bump into each other at the airport in LA, and all the bodyguards are like scrapping. Tyson wins both fights, but after the second one, his team gets into another fight in the ring with Razor Ruddock's entourage. So it's all pretty.
You're still picturing Neil.
I'm still picturing Neil. Yeah.
Neil Ruddock, yeah.
Isn't there some incident where they then, after that fight, they fly home and they end up on the same flight?
Yeah, it's after the bodyguard fight at the airport.
And Mike spends the whole flight pelting Razor Ruddock with grapes.
Yeah, it's quite
one of his more charming crimes.
Yeah, so he wins that fight. He's been living this quite I don't want to say monk-like existence because he was escaping to shag, but they were really trying to keep him under control. So in July 1991, Mike is delighted when he gets invited along to the Miss Black America pageant in Indianapolis. So on the day of the event, he turns up to the dress rehearsal, and all of the girls are so excited that he's there. He's like dancing down the line, flirting with everyone. And one of them in particular, the 18-year-old Desiree Washington, catches Mike's eye, and they chat a little bit. They agree to meet up later that night. So he does. He picks her up in his limo, and they drive around a little bit and end up at his hotel, where he claims that they have consensual sex. Her side of the story, though, is very different. So, according to Desiree, he called her at 1:45 a.m., invited her out for a drive, and, you know, she thought that she was very quite excited about this. You know, it's a celebrity, somebody who she idolised. But they drive around for a little while, and he suggests that they go back to her hotel room. She thinks that this is just to talk and to hang out. But she says that when they're up there, he propositions her for sex, which she refuses. And she says that she went to the bathroom to diffuse the situation, and that when she came back out, he raped her. So the following day, Desiree goes to the emergency room for treatment. She reports him for rape. Tyson says that when he hears this accusation, he's completely shocked. He didn't think anything untoward had happened at all. But he's arrested, and eventually a jury indicts him for the crime. So he's up for 4 charges, including rape, and facing a total of 63 years in jail. So he completely denies it. He says everything that went on was consensual. The trial is set for the following January, which means that his fight against Evander Holyfield has to be postponed. So the trial comes around. Mike's still denying everything. Don King, his manager, insists on hiring this $5,000 a day lawyer who'd got Don off a tax evasion charge. So
he's not a criminal lawyer.
He's not a criminal lawyer. So Don had basically, he'd got over this tax evasion charge, and Don King was like, yeah, this guy's great. Turns out he knew nothing about sexual assault cases. He didn't know anything about Indiana law. He's
a tax expert.
He's a tax expert. He was pretty useless. So this lawyer, he gets Tyson to testify in court, which it goes terribly. Basically, Tyson says in his book that every other legal expert had just said, like, don't keep your mouth shut. Like, obviously, we know that conviction rates for these kind of crimes are pretty low, so that if he'd kept his mouth shut, there was a good chance that he could have got off for it. But he does testify, and apparently comes across really arrogantly. The jurors are pretty shocked by his vulgar language. And the case rolls on. The limo driver testifies against Mike. She says that Desiree was scared and distressed after leaving.
Did she leave in the limo?
When Desiree left Mike Tyson's room, she got in the limo to go back to where she was staying. The limo driver testifies. The limo driver also claims that Mike had tried to sexually assault her in the past as well. An emergency room doctor also testifies about Desiree's injuries. And on March the 26th, 1992, the jury deliver their verdict, and Mike is found guilty.
So was that a shock?
I think it was. I think because I think there'd been a number of other high-profile cases of sexual assault where famous men had got off. Obviously, conviction rates in these cases are depressingly low. So Mike, I think, went into this case quite arrogantly. There's pictures of him arriving at the court case just like grinning at the cameras. I think he thinks it's sort of a foregone conclusion. Obviously it's not. So between the verdict being given and Mike receiving his sentence, there's a little bit of a gap, and he heads back to New York, where he decides to take matters into his own hands and enlist a load of witch doctors who try to cast spells to keep him out of jail. So one of them tells him to put $500 in a jar and piss in it, keep it under his bed for 3 nights, and then give it to her. Which is
give her the $500.
Give her the $500.
What's she going to do with that?
Hopefully wash the piss off. Why?
And then sell it on, yeah.
Why the piss?
I guess it's just to like add a veneer of credibility to her.
Theatre around.
Yeah.
Put your hair in there.
Yeah. He actually refuses to do that. But 3 days before the sentencing, he goes to the courtroom in the middle of the night and releases a pigeon in one hand while dropping an egg in the other one.
Nice, that should do it.
That should do
circle
it.
of life.
Facing
it should.
63 years, but
Yeah.
I've got a pigeon.
Yeah.
Is that because pigeons are important to Mike, or is it just a coincidence?
You
You can see why he picked the pigeon ceremony over the piss.
Yeah, you can see why if a
Loves
witch
pigeons.
doctor, if Mike Tyson comes to you and you're a witch doctor and you're cooking up some kind of spell,
Pigeon.
tell him there's pigeons involved. And
Pigeon might be the easiest to get hold of as well.
True.
In any
Upstairs.
city.
Yeah.
Get to your roof if you
Just
like.
Yeah.
some ratty pigeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work though. You'll be surprised to hear. And Mike is sentenced to 6 years in jail. So,
Which is just thinking mad moments in sporting history, like without the benefit of hindsight, that happening at the time. Obviously, he'd been found guilty, but just that whole thing must have been mad. You know, he was one of the most famous people in the world.
yeah, so this is pre OJ. So
Pre-Menendez brothers.
pre Menendez brother. Yeah.
That
So
famously happened at the
sporting.
same time as OJ.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, this sort of, at the time, I guess, was a precedent for a super mega high profile sporting star going on a very public trial. Before he goes into jail, Tyson sends $100,000 to the mother of D'Amato, his son. And he says that he'll sort out payments to her while she's inside. She, at this point, decides to sue him for millions of dollars of child support, which turns out to be a massive mistake because as part of that, they do a blood test which reveals that Tyson is actually not the father of the child after all. So she
Shit, that's
really fucked
backfired.
it.
Shot
yeah.
herself in the foot there.
So what? She's just had a kid with someone random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess she had
Shit.
shagged Mike Tyson around that time.
There's a lesson there. I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Also, that's the kid he's named after. His
That's
like,
the kid he's named
hero.
after. Yeah. I mean, I think it was quite sad for him as well because he'd sort of built up a bit of,
Yeah, you've basically
built
lost
a
a
relationship
child,
with his child. Yeah. Although, as part of that, the blood test does reveal that he is the father of another child who was born in New York around the same time. So you win some, you lose some.
So how does that work? Is there just a database?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
23andMe.
Yeah. So yeah, he gets sent off to jail in Indiana, and during that first year behind bars, Mike he's constantly getting into scraps with other inmates, with prison guards. He spends a lot of time in what they call the hole, which is basically solitary confinement. It's a 6'9" cell with a mattress on the floor where the light's switched on 23 hours a day.
Oh, I said that's how they do. You're thinking how they're going to make it more horrible, but it's lights on.
Yeah, it's sounds pretty grim. He kind of alludes to parts of his book that he actually quite liked going into the solitary for a bit because it was obviously being in jail in Indiana, you're hanging out with some pretty horrible men all the time. So it's quite nice to get a bit of peace and quiet. So while he's inside, Mike receives thousands of letters from fans just wishing him well and asking if there's anything that they can help him with. And he's going through these letters one time, and one of his pals inside, who's clearly a little bit more streetwise than Mike, realizes that he's like, Mike, like these people, they want to help you. So he starts replying to these letters on Mike's behalf and basically asking people if they can send him money, which, like he's like a multi-millionaire boxer, surely he doesn't need it. But these people, they go for it, and apparently at one point, prison guards pull Mike aside and tell him that he's got $100,000 in his account from just like fans have sent them in.
I guess they're just honoured to be helping their hero.
Yeah.
Do these people think he's innocent? They must do.
They must do.
Because he
yeah.
vigorously denies
He always denies it.
Yeah.
He still denies it to this day. Along with cash, they also send him jewelry and loads of nudes as well, which he ends up selling to other prisoners. Become sort of prison currency.
It's the ultimate currency in prison.
Yeah.
Cigs and nudes.
I think he mentions also in his book that some of the prisoners would buy these girls' numbers off him. So he said that some of them ended up getting married to these girls that he'd introduced them to.
Cupid Tyson.
Yeah.
So they're not pretending
from
to be
behind
him.
bars. No, they're just
What sort of
He's a
person?
matchmaker, are you saying?
Yeah, I think he's doing it for
Yeah.
But what sort of person answers the phone? It's like, you have a call from Indiana Correctional
Yeah, it's like,
Facility.
oh, it
and
might
they're
be
like,
Mike Tyson.
might be
It's
Mike
like-
Tyson. And they're like, hi, it's fucking Steve here. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to
Some
marry
lonely
you.
people out there.
I guess those people have already cleared the main obstacle, which
Yeah.
is I am attracted to convicted felons.
Yeah.
So after that, you're just chatting to interesting guys.
Yeah, and they know Mike Tyson as well, probably.
If anything, it's
So-
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a dating app in that? It's quite old fashioned back then, before we had convict dating apps.
Yeah, you know, some people don't, no kink shaming.
Do you reckon they're just constantly on the phone asking what Mike Tyson's like? And he's like, look, can we just...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what, you know, I'm getting
About
out
me?
in like
Yeah.
6 months, yeah.
But I will sell you a lock of his hair.
Yeah. So Mike ends up rooming with a guy called Wayno, who kind of runs the wing. He's the guy on the wing who's sorting stuff out for people. He's got links with the guards. Apparently, him and Mike never have to eat in the prison canteen because they just every night they just get a KFC pizza barbecue delivered. Apparently, one time they get lobster delivered to their cell.
It's giving Goodfellas.
Yeah, I was about to say, when they're just eating that like amazing steak in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
Escobar, who had his
Yeah,
own
it was-
zoo in the prison.
Diego Maradona's coming in to do kick-ups with him.
What, is that because they have money and therefore they can bribe the guards, basically?
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, he's
With
got 100
nudes
grand
or-
in his account.
And Wayno, he sounds like a proper nifty character.
Yeah, I'm sure he's
And he's got the financial backing of Mike, so
Mm.
he's one of
it's
those
the perfect
guys.
duo.
You
Yeah.
quite like him, and then you Google him. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, I forgot you were a
You were serving a 30 stretch.
vicious murderer.
Yeah. I
Does
mean,
have access to KFC, though. so.
Yeah.
so Mike and Wayno also spend a lot of time reading to each other in their cell. They're reading Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Karl Marx, Chairman Mao. Mike actually leaves prison with tattoos of Chairman Mao and Che Guevara, as well as the tennis player Arthur Ashe. I think he reads his autobiography.
Right, yeah. Didn't you say he also leaves fluent in Chinese as well?
Yeah, so
not
he,
fluent,
not fluent, but yeah, he puts his time to learning Chinese. He actually says that years later, he's in China and is still able to hold a decent conversation in Chinese.
they can't understand him. But... Oh, so he's getting some productive time out of Wayno.
He does. It's not all late nights on the books though, because Mike also discovers a way to have sex in jail. One of Mike's fellow inmates lets him in on a little trick that he's worked out to shag his girlfriend while he's in jail. So the guy tells him it's basically like you just get them, you set them up before, tell them that they need to wear crotchless pants and a long dress, and then you go out into the garden and sit them on your lap, and because they got this flowing dress on, to the guards it just looks like they're just chatting, they're just sat on her lap. You're actually shagging. So once Mike catches wind of this trick, he's over the moon, and he starts just inviting random girls that have written letters to him to come and visit him in jail. So he before they come in, he explains the whole game to them and how they've got to dress, and
We're
what's
not going to be
happen.
talking about Mao's Red Book when you visit.
Yeah. We will not be discussing Arthur Ashe's
Dostoevsky.
famous Wimbledon run. So he's basically just like every week inviting in these girls to just shag in the garden. But eventually he gets a bit too brazen with it and ends up being caught by the prison guards. And the entire prison, after that, gets banned from doing yard visits, which in the prison is nicknamed the Tyson Rule.
Oh, so they're all...
They're all fucking angry at
I was
him.
going to say, I'm surprised they're allowed to sort of like have people sitting on their knee in the garden, but...
Yeah, I know. I was surprised by that too. Not anymore.
Not anymore,
in
thanks to
Indiana. That little trick gets banned, but it's not long before Mike finds another way to get some action inside. So he learns that you can, if you complete this drug counselling course, then you can get 6 months knocked off your sentence. He's not even on drugs while he's inside, but he decides to sort of pretend that he is and do this course. As soon as he gets in there, he starts flirting with the teacher. Initially, she's really not into it, and she says that she'll get him kicked off the course if he carries on. But you know, he's a charming guy. They carry on chatting, and she basically explains to him that there's been a big storm on the outside. The roof of her house has been ripped off, and Mike has a brainwave, and that night he calls one of his pals on the outside, who arranges for 10 grand to be delivered to the prison counsellor's house.
In cash.
In cash to pay for her roof. The next day she turns up dressed very nicely, and got done up makeup, looking lovely, and they shag in the classroom. And from that point on, it just escalates. So soon they're shagging like 3 times a day. He says that he's out on the wing, like doing his workout, and the voice will just crackle into the tannoy, "Tyson to the school." And he just, I think his heart just sort of sinks, and it's like, oh, I gotta go back again, third time this day.
So is he initially in it for the sex, and then is just in it for the sort of like passing this course thing?
Yeah. So I mean, she's sort of got him by the balls in many ways.
I love how brazen she is that she's just
she's on the
tannoy.
Tyson, Mike Tyson to the school.
I don't feel this this prison is very well run.
Yeah. There's definitely a few ways to get around the rules. He says in his book, "I was having so much sex that I was too tired to even go to the gym and work out. I just stay in my cell every day." Yeah, she actually ends up getting pregnant in the end. He only explains this later in interviews. But yeah.
So is there
I don't know. So
a baby out there?
Yeah, he never really explains what happens. I don't know whether she went through with the pregnancy. I think not. Otherwise, we probably would have heard of it.
That's a tough conversation with the child at some point.
Yeah. Mummy was my prison counsellor.
You're familiar with Mike Tyson, I'm sure. You know,
Just get out your drug counselling certificate. This is how me and Mummy met. While he's inside, though, he actually does start a proper relationship with a doctor called Monica Turner. So him and Monica had actually met before he went to jail at a party at Eddie Murphy's house.
Nice.
So she was, yeah.
The celeb cameos are just great. Just Eddie Murphy in the Nutty Professor era.
Yeah. So they'd met at this party, and I think that like the following day, Mike had driven to her house and tried to shag her. Basically, this wasn't too romantic, but she turned him down. But while he's inside, she gives him a call one day, and they start talking on the phone quite a lot, and kind of fall in love. And she starts visiting him in jail, and he says that she was the visitor that he was looking forward to most, and they basically arranged to meet up when he's on the outside.
Oh, so she didn't come and sit on his knee in the
garden?
garden?
No, she didn't. No, sadly not. I think this was
sort of girl.
This was post-Tyson rule.
Right, okay.
Actually, he has a lot of celeb visitors while he's in jail. Maya Angelou comes in, Malcolm X's wife, James Brown comes in one day dressed in fully in a purple suit and purple shoes. Tupac actually comes and visits him as well. Apparently when Tupac comes in, this was at like the peak of Tupac's fame, and the jail goes absolutely mad. Tupac jumps up on a table and starts doing an impromptu show.
His prison sounds like a good laugh.
Fucking great. Tupac's in there.
Yeah, do you want Tupac, Maya Angelou?
James Brown rocket.
James Brown.
Velvet.
Shagging teachers.
Yeah, KFC. Lobster in your cell. It's like,
they say crime doesn't pay. Yeah. That is if you're Mike Tyson in the prison.
Yeah.
Or Wayno.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're just like some violent white supremacist.
Yeah. Different vibe.
But him and Tupac get on like a house on fire. They're chatting about revolutionary theory, exchanging.
Yeah, they've got a bit in common on that front, haven't they?
Yeah.
Is that from that list of guests? And I think I've read this. There's a bit of a sense among some people that Mike Tyson was stitched up in a racist way, right?
That's definitely the
people who believe that he didn't do it. That is an argument they'll make.
In on literally the first page of Mike Tyson's autobiography, he talks about how this case wasn't taking place in New York. It wasn't taking place in LA. It was taking place in Indiana, which he calls a Ku Klux Klan stronghold. So he's clearly claiming that there's a racial element in the fact that he was found guilty.
Yeah,
he's right. Indiana had the highest KKK membership.
Okay,
there were 2 black people on the jury. Actually.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I mean that's his argument.
I'm sure it was a factor.
Yeah, I mean it's there is a kind of lot of racist around that
Yeah.
neck of the woods. Actually, apparently, when Tupac comes to visit, Mike's trying to convince him to give up pork, because while he's inside, another key thing that happens is that he converts to Islam. So I think he starts going to the mosque kind of as a social thing. It's sort of like a lot of people are just hanging out there, but he starts reading the Quran and eventually converts. And before long, he's trying to get Tupac off pork.
But like, if you've got an opportunity to get Tupac off bad habits, pork wouldn't be high on my list.
So it was a pretty eventful time inside. Doesn't sound too bad, to be honest, judging by some of the stories. I think other people have had worse experiences in Indiana jails. But after 3 years, Mike is released. So during his time inside, he goes from £272 to £216, which, considering he weighed 200 pounds when he was 14, is quite a weight.
So he
loss.
lost about 4 stone.
Lost about 4 stone,
That's a
yeah.
lot.
Prison food.
Yeah, but he's
Well,
got
KFC, of course.
But despite his weight loss, Don King has already lined up £200 million worth of fights for Mike. And as he steps out of jail, a media scrum is awaiting him.
So it's 1995 when he gets out. So he served 3 years of his 6-year sentence, and the rest is he's on probation, right? So he can go back in. He's,
shagged his prison counsellor enough to get some time knocked off.
Turns out it's easy. So he says the day of his release, he's woken early by the sound of helicopters flying overhead, which he knows are for him. He actually, it won't surprise you to learn, he doesn't want to leave jail.
I'm not surprised.
Neither would I.
He said, I was enjoying chilling and getting visits from celebs. I mean, yeah, it'd be a tough place to leave to go back to the real world.
He's got Mitch Green waiting for him at the outside as well.
But leave he must, and he steps out of jail where Don King is waiting for him with a limousine, and he drives him straight to Mike's house, where Don has arranged a welcome home party. But Mike's not into it, so he says it was just full of people he didn't even know who Don was friends with, and Don had laid out a buffet of lobster, pork and champagne, which was all stuff that a Muslim can't eat. And so very quickly, Mike just shuts down the party. He says, I kicked Don out, and then me and Monica consummated our relationship. So Monica Turner, the doctor we mentioned earlier. This is the beginning of their relationship proper. And as for Don King, Mike has sort of made up his mind about him. And the next day, he calls Don round and fires him and says, like, you know, you're just squeezing me for money. I don't want to work with you anymore. But Don came prepared. And after Mike rants at him for a while, Don picks up a briefcase and opens it to reveal $1 million in cash. And Mike is once again back in his clutches. So that's all it took. He changes his mind, sticks with Don, and he says, I would soon pull back into the thick world of garish consumption of booze and women. So he's really back to his old habits, despite having converted to Islam and he's got some good intentions. He says that he's just already getting so much money thrown at him for these upcoming fights that he really just forgets all about his good intentions. And he goes on a mad spending spree. So among his purchases is a 6-acre Vegas mansion where he installs statues of Alexander the Great, Hannibal and Genghis Khan in his garden. I mean, Genghis Khan, famous sort of bloodthirsty, like horrible bastard.
Famous shagger as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, supposedly his like lineage, like there's a ridiculous portion, like 10%.
We're all descendants of Genghis Khan, aren't we?
Yeah, something like that.
Some of us more than others. Mike Tyson. Obviously, he just loves these like anti-heroes. So he's got this weird pad. He says his girlfriend Monica's closet in the house is 1,000 square feet.
How much does he spend anything on sort of tree maintenance or anything?
Thanks for asking, Zach. Yeah, his annual garden maintenance bill is $200,000, which I thought was really interesting in research. Zach thought was an utterly tedious detail. It's a lot.
Well, how big's the garden?
6 acres.
Do you know what type of trees there are?
Well, yeah, I think basically some of them are Dutch elms, and you often have a lichen problem with Dutch elms.
Any Japanese knotweed?
Oh yeah, if you've got Japanese knotweed, you are fucked.
Yeah.
Obviously,
100 grand of that would be
that
the
needs a
lowest.
specialist gardener as well to handle those kind
More
of
than
things,
one.
which is
I've actually, our neighbour noticed we've got some Japanese knotweed growing on our roof. Luckily, I don't own the house. How can I make this more boring? But of course, as before he went to jail, one of Mike's big passions is buying cars, and he decides to really add to the collection. And so one day he heads round to a Rolls-Royce dealership with a couple of his friends, and he says, we're kind of dressed like gangsters, and when they get there, the staff don't recognise him. They think they're just like three chances. So they send over like the most junior member of staff, I think it's just like a kid on work experience, to go and deal with it. They're just like, go and talk to these guys, go and get rid of them. And so this kid comes over and he's like, hello sir, how may I help you? And Mike's like, that Rolls Royce over there, how many of that do you have? And he's like, oh, you want to test drive the car, sir? And he goes, no, I'll buy it, and I'll buy all the ones you have. And he goes, fuck it, I'll buy all the cars in this joint. So he buys all the Rolls Royces. And apparently, according to Mike, the next day the shop fired their general manager and promoted this kid to be general manager. He's got.
So they think he's just some genius
sales
salesman.
genius. But surely, if you realise it's
Everything
Mike
I
Tyson,
touch turns to sold.
surely once the dealership realised the customer was Mike Tyson, it's less impressive. I don't know. I love it though. It's a nice moment. He says there's so much cash washing around his house that at one point his assistant asks to borrow a bag to go to the shops, and he's just like, oh yeah, just grab one of those bags over there. There's like a pile of Louis Vuitton duffel bags, and she picks up one of them, and in it is $1 million in cash. And he says every time he sends clothes to the dry cleaner will return his clothes and also an envelope with 20 grand that they've just found in cash in his pockets. He's just drenched in it with all these fight deals Don's arranged.
They returned the envelope with 20 grand in cash in the pocket.
Yeah, it's like, how much was in there originally?
Yeah.
I mean, I would just nick it.
Yeah.
Well, even if it was Mike Tyson.
He's not going to fucking know, is he?
Yeah.
Take your taste. Maybe they did. Of course.
You're going to get a lot more careful since you're brushed with the bullies. Since with your arm in a sling,
I'd return more than the 20, actually. I'm that much of a wuss.
Just in case.
Of course, no purchase is as outrageous as Michael's collection of tigers and lions. So apparently while he was in jail, one of Mike's regular car dealers visited him and mentioned to Mike that one of his friends had pet tigers. And Tyson was so excited by this idea that the car dealer's like, okay, I got a surprise for you when you get out. And the day he gets out, Mike arrives at his house and there are 4 cubs on his lawn, 2 tigers, 2 lions. And these grow to become his pets. There's one in particular that he grows very close to, which is a white tiger cub called Kenya. He sleeps in bed with her every night that his girlfriend's not there. And when his girlfriend's not there, they have to put her out in the shed, and she just spends the whole night tearing it apart and crying for him. And he has to go in, calm her down. And apparently, basically, if you leave them for too long, these exotic pets, they'll forget who you are and they'll attack you when you see them. So everywhere he travels around the country, he has to ship them with him. He gives up quite early on the lions because he's petting them one day and one of them just bites him on his arm. He has 6 stitches.
That will happen.
Yeah.
So not a roaring success then.
No, sir. Apparently when he's in A&E, they're like, how did you do this? And he's just like, I fell, because no one can know about this fucking lion. I mean, it gets more mental. So he's visiting a zoo with Monica, his girlfriend, and they see this pen of gorillas, silverback gorillas, and he notices that one of them is the king of the silverbacks. It's top of the pecking order. And so he turns to the zookeeper and offers him, he says, I offered the attendant $10,000 to open the cage and let me smash that silverback snot box. He declined. So yeah, he's just fucking nuts. I should say, having got out of jail, has really resumed the old coke habit, and some of this behaviour might be explicable that way.
Just on the gorilla, if he had done that, he would no longer be alive. That gorilla would have just torn him limb from limb.
Could you knock one out?
What, a gorilla?
Could you?
Not you.
Oh, could I?
No,
I certainly
anyone.
could.
Mike Tyson.
No human being. A human being
that's
couldn't
so
even knock out a
strong.
chimp.
If you hit him with bang, bang, bang.
Oh, maybe if you did that, then
He's got
If
quite
he got
fast
him with
flurry.
the perfect shot,
Uppercut, that was his special.
I doubt it, but we'll never know.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy.
Yeah.
maybe that'll be Netflix latest special.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, he never gets to fight the Silverbacks. So his first fight back instead is against Peter McNeely. And it's actually a complete joke. So Don's just lined up a really easy fight for him as his comeback. He destroys him in 89 seconds. The guy's trainer throws in the towel. It's just such a brutal domination by Mike. So he's
Probably what would have happened roles reversed if he'd fought the silverback.
Anyway, so he's underway. He's back on the road. He didn't get to fight the silverback, but he's beaten McNeely, and everyone's scared of him again. By this point, he's got 3 children. So I guess one of them is the random child that was picked up by accident. And then he's got at least one with Monica, his girlfriend. So anyway, so they come to this McNeely fight with Monica. But unfortunately, he has to bring his tiger as well, because as discussed, the tiger comes with him everywhere. And he said, Monica or the kids couldn't get close to me when Kenya, the tiger, was around. If they get affectionate with me, Kenya was ready to attack. Which for me is the point at which, if you haven't already, it's time to get rid of your pet tiger when you're like fucking toddler can get attacked by it. But no, he brings the tiger. So he's in this fight in Vegas, and he leaves the tiger in his hotel room, which is a bit of a foreshadowing of the whole hangover stuff, isn't it? And this tiger completely destroys it. He says she shit everywhere. She ate the blinds, ate the sofa. He's just like, fucking hell, this is getting a bit out of hand. Anyway, the next day he wants to go out and celebrate. So once again, he needs to put the tiger somewhere. And Don King offers up his townhouse, which Kenya proceeds to do the exact same thing to, just like eats
Why would you
everything.
do that?
Pretty sure at some point this tiger will have eaten like $1 million in cash, probably. It's just lying around.
But also, the hotel staff, when he brought that tiger in, do you think did he sneak it in through like the back door, or do you think or does it just come through the lobby and get in the lift?
On a chain?
Yeah.
I mean, hasn't he subsequently said that he now appreciates that having a pet tiger is also cruel?
Was it a Vegas hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
probably
literally the hangover,
it's
isn't
probably
it?
Yeah,
encouraged
I
there,
think
isn't it?
lions and tigers in Vegas hotels are quite.
Or do you think that's just par for the course?
Well, it was it a thing in a casino?
Yeah, maybe. It's like Victorian Britain, and then it's sort of like coked up 80s New York, isn't it? Or Vegas.
And Tiger King.
Of course, yeah. Anyway, then they take Kenya back to his house because he's done with the fight, returns to his house, and he decides to leave her in the garage and comes back to discover she's ripped the roof off his Maserati. Which, like, at what point do you start to get the message? Yeah. Anyway, meanwhile, Mike he's spending more time with his kids, and after the fight, he gives a press conference where he tries to compliment Monica and their daughter. He fucks it up slightly. He says of his new daughter, Raina, her mother is beautiful, but Raina is so beautiful and gorgeous that she makes her mother look like a yard dog.
Charmer.
You'd be pretty fucked up if you're Monica. Surely you can see that is not an appropriate compliment. It's a pretty weird relationship with Monica. So they get married around this time, but she doesn't even live with him, apparently. Most of the time he's just living somewhere else, and he's shagging constantly. And then he has this massive 30th birthday party. He says, everyone from Oprah to Donald Trump to Jay-Z to Street Pimp and their hoes was there. But he doesn't invite Monica. So, quite weird. But
Were the tigers there?
Yeah, I think the tigers were front and centre. Yeah. He said there was a guy hand rolling cigars. He like really revels in this thing of like Donald Trump's chatting to this like heroin dealer's girlfriend who's like a street hoe. And yeah, I can imagine his tigers are sort of wandering around, just freaking people out. I read another story about him that he would get like his celeb mates to come round and they'd get out of the limo and there'd just be a tiger on the lawn and he'd go up and like wrestle the tiger and stroke it, but everyone else is just fucking terrified. Anyway, the boxing is going well and Mike is on course to regain the world title. So he gets to fight Frank Bruno, British heavyweight champion. Or British world heavyweight champion. And it goes really well. He knocks him out in 3 rounds with 12 unanswered punches. So Mike is once again world champion. He's back on top. This is 1996. That's the WBC belt. Not long after that, he takes on Bruce Seldon for the WBA belt, and he wins it in under 2 minutes. And having come out of jail, started again from the relative bottom, Mike Tyson is once again the unified heavyweight champion of the world. So he's buzzing. And he's even more happy when he's in his dressing room celebrating after the fight. And there's a knock on his door. And it's Tupac Shakur, who's come to jump on the table once again and start rapping and celebrating with him. And him and Tupac, they make plans, let's meet up after the fight. We'll go out, celebrate. They're going to go to Suge Knight, who's the founder of Death Row Records. They're going to go to his nightclub and celebrate. And Mike recalls that night, the fight went down. All his fights around this time are in the MGM Grand in Vegas. And he says that night, Tupac had an altercation with a gang guy in a casino. And after the fight, Tupac had stomped this guy on his face. Anyway, Mike goes home to see his daughter before he heads out, and he actually falls asleep and is woken up to the news. They say, Mike, they shot Tupac. So this is the night that Tupac Shakur was killed. He was meant to be hanging with Mike Tyson. Tupac was driving away from the fight in a car with Suge Knight when some guys pulled up next to him at a red light and just shot him. A bullet grazes Suge Knight. There are some theories that it was some sort of inside job, which Mike Tyson subscribes to. He thinks someone in Tupac's camp helped make it happen, because he's like, it's just unthinkable that he wouldn't have had like an entourage in cars around him.
Well, there's theories that Tupac's still alive, aren't there?
Yeah, he's in Mexico City in a flat with Elvis Presley and the real Paul McCartney, because obviously Paul McCartney is a body
and Avril
double.
Lavigne is possibly
and Avril
well.
Lavigne, because she's also a body double.
It's always Argentina, isn't it? Or Mexico City.
Yeah. Argentina's for Nazis, isn't it?
That's sorry. Yeah,
I think that one's actually true. Yeah, I would, when we do our spin-off of The Upshot, I'm looking forward to the Tupac episodes, because it's a wild story. But yeah, Mike says that. He's like, he would have had an entourage around him. But like, as we talked about in episode 1, there are times where Mike's just in a club and his like date gets shot in the leg because he's not got any protection. So don't know if I believe him. But it's obviously like a mad moment for him, a guy who he was not super close with, but he loved Tupac's vibe, his like aggressive revolutionary rhetoric.
Yeah. I mean, you'd feel some kind of, obviously he's not guilty at all in this, but Tupac was going from his fight to meet him in another club. Like, you feel some sort of
responsibility. Yeah.
I mean, probably Tupac shouldn't have stabbed on the guy's face.
The next paragraph in his book, it's not even a new chapter. He's just like, but I was having a wild time, living it up, drugs, booze. So he doesn't seem too affected by it. But there is a major fight on the horizon for Mike Tyson, because he's got to defend his title against Evander Holyfield. When Mike was sent to jail, he was due to fight Holyfield in 1992. And that fight obviously got scrapped because he went to jail, but it's now time. And Holyfield's one of the most dangerous heavyweights in the world. So, Mike hasn't been tested a huge amount so far. Frank Bruno and Bruce Seldon were champions, but this is another level. Holyfield's like the coming guy. And they have this fight, which goes extremely badly for Mike. So he puts his title on the line, and very quickly it all goes wrong. He says he blacks out in the second round of the fight because Holyfield is repeatedly headbutting him. And to be fair, Evander Holyfield does headbutt a lot. So a lot of opponents complain about this. He has this tactic, sort of a dark art, where he's a tall guy, but he'll sort of go low and then rise his head into his opponent's head. So it looks accidental, but it's, he's hitting them pretty hard. And it's a foul to headbutt someone, but Holyfield kind of gets away with it. It's this sort of like grey area. So Mike goes on to lose the fight, and he says he's so out of it that afterwards he asks his corner, like, which round was it that I knocked Holyfield out in? And they're like, no, mate, you lost. So he essentially accuses Holyfield of cheating and says there's no way he lost that. And I'm partially inclined to agree. I mean, Mike Tyson always gives the most biased accounts of everything, but there are a lot of like compilations online where you can watch the headbutts. There are loads of clashes of heads, so it's possible. Anyway, Tyson has a rematch clause saying he can fight Holyfield to win back his belt. So he immediately activates that clause and starts training for a rematch. And 6 months later, he gets his rematch against Evander Holyfield. This is a key moment in Mike Tyson's career. He'd come out of jail, he'd won the belts back, he'd lost them to Holyfield, who he thinks was cheating. This is his chance to silence all his critics in his beloved Las Vegas in front of a packed crowd. The bell rings, and immediately, he says, Holyfield is just trying the same tactic. He's just sticking his head in, butting him. You can see it on the video. It's definitely happening. And so Mike resorts to extreme measures. As the two come out for the third round, eagle-eyed viewers notice that Mike is not wearing his gum shield. So mid-round, the pair come together in a clinch. Tyson gets Holyfield's arm into a lock, and suddenly Holyfield screams in pain and begins jumping around, holding his ear. We've got a clip of it.
What happened here?
He got bit, I think.
Evander Holyfield, look out! He's pushed right here, above us by Tyson.
He's got bit in the ear.
Oh my goodness, he's got a bloody right ear. Holyfield bit by a dirty Mike Tyson.
Oh, here comes the commissioner now. They got to figure it out.
Well, this is the doctor and the commissioner both taking a look at it.
He bit his ear. He's out. Disqualified. He bit his ear. I can see the bite mark.
He bit his ear, he's out.
Tony Mark Ratner, head of the commission.
Well, let me ask the doc. He bit his ear. Can he go on?
Yes.
Okay.
The referee is going to disqualify Tyson. Then he goes, let me just ask the doctor. And he's like, goes to the doctor, can he continue? And the doctor's just like, yeah. Because presumably he's being paid to keep the fight going at all costs. And so they carry on. So he actually takes a chunk out of Holyfield's ear with that bite. You can see in the clip there's blood streaming all over it. But later on, one of the cleaners is cleaning up after the fight and he finds the piece of ear on the canvas. And apparently he goes and takes it to Holyfield's dressing room and knocks on the door and they're like, hello. And he's just like, I have some of Mr. Holyfield's ear, which they try and reattach. They can't.
I don't think I've ever seen such a high quality version of that. You really see him like move his head forward and sink his teeth in. It's really
it's gory stuff. Anyway, the ref deducts 2 points, restarts the fight, and 20 seconds later, this happens.
A very angry Evander Holyfield now. A left hook.
You know, it's funny. Mike was having his best
He bit him
round.
again. He
He
bit
did
him
it
again.
again. Mike Tyson has bitten Evander Holyfield for the second time, and it is all out war. Mills Lane signaling that it's over. I think they've just about had enough. Tyson showing desperation in fighting Holyfield two times. More fighting in the ring after the end of the fight. Tyson's trying to get at Holyfield again, I believe. It is complete bedlam, and Tyson is just taking swipes at anybody in front of him.
So, like, all hell breaks loose. So the police have to restrain Tyson. He punches a policeman at one point, and then as he's led out, he climbs into the crowd and tries to fight a fan who's chucked his drink over him. So it's like proper chaos. And it actually sparks a riot at the MGM Grand where the fight's being held. It's compared by the press to a war zone because all these angry punters are, fired up. People have lost money or like hoping to get a proper fight. And they all break into spontaneous fights. They burst into the casino and start trashing the gaming tables, stealing chips. There are reports of gunshots, which are never fully confirmed either way. And the MGM Grand, for the first time in its history, has to close its casino. So obviously that's a 24-hour operation. You should imagine all these
just wheeling out these grannies off their slot machines.
exactly, in their visors. You need to go, miss. It's absolute chaos. And yeah, he's lost the fight. Obviously, he's been disqualified. Surprised it took the ref so long.
Yeah.
I never knew he had 2 bites at the cherry. I thought it was just the one.
Yeah. Which is pretty mental. I mean, it's weird that no one was like, can you just put your gum shield back in?
Yeah.
Because that would have stopped it.
It was clearly premeditated if he took his gum shield out.
Yeah, I mean, he says that's not why I took my mouth guard out. But, I think we all know Mike well enough by this point to doubt that. But, his point is that Holyfield was headbutting him. He complained repeatedly to the ref who didn't buy it. And so he took matters into his own hands. Right after the fight, the TV interviewer manages to grab Tyson's manager, John Horn, who gives this fairly passionate defense.
Evander's been headbutting Mike for 2 fights. Headbutting is a foul, a complete foul, but it's been happening so often, so long. Evander turned it into a street fight a long time ago. And I'm not going to even get off until I understand everything and see what happened. And all I know is Mike got a cut over his eye, 3 inches long. Evander got a little nip on his ear that don't mean nothing. Mike, and that's the bottom line. He jumped around like a little bitch. The ear ain't got nothing to do with his fight. He got a little cut on the ear, man. The ear ain't got nothing to do with the fight. Ain't got nothing to do with his arms, his legs, his hands, his body, nothing.
You don't need to scream at me. You don't need to scream at me.
Mike got a cut over his eye.
Okay. It's absolute chaos. And to be fair, it is unprecedented in professional boxing. It does spawn some great headlines in the aftermath. Paper chew, end of an era, lobe blow, world chomp. And all the press coverage, as you'd expect, is like super outraged. People calling for him to be banned for life.
So he got an earful from the press.
He got an absolute earful. I mean, if you're Evander Holyfield, you must just be like, what the fuck? I did see actually on YouTube, there's a clip of them like remembering it together, like filmed a few years ago and sort of just like laughing about it together. So Evander's, you know, been a good guy about it over the years. But yeah, it's fucking crazy. Needless to say, the boxing authorities don't agree with John Horn that it's just a little scratch on his ear. They fine Mike $3 million and ban him for at least a year. They take away his license. So, having worked his way back to the world title, Mike Tyson has once again lost it all, and he finishes part 2 of our series once again mired in controversy, and the chaos doesn't stop there. So, join us next time for the third and final part of the Mike Tyson story as he spirals further out of control, is sent back to the slammer, and then pieces his life back together. We will see you then. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Jack.
Will.
I'll be back stronger next time, or maybe weaker.
Yeah, maybe more Mitch Green. I'm expecting the other arm to go. Bit of ear missing would be really nice if you can arrange that.
Yeah. I'll see what I can do with old Gary.
Gary the Bully. We'll see you then. Cheers.